Yeah, we had a little bit of a problem. The battery died and we didn't notice, so we have to do some more video in here. Start off where we were.
Yeah, we were talking about Skagway and the incredible weather, and it really was. When you think back of stories of people riding in the mountains in BC, even in early September, and here we were mid-September, and we had just wonderful weather all through. Anyway, yeah, we left Skagway and headed down back to our ferry. The ferry was going to take us to from Skagway down to Prince Rupert, and from Prince Rupert we were going to stay a day and then take a second ferry from Prince Rupert over to Port Hardy, which is on the very northern tip of Vancouver Island, and our destination was Victoria proper, because we were now going to a reunion of my naval training class, and it was I think our 55th anniversary of having sort of started this venture program. We arrived in Port Hardy off the ferry, and I remember it was dark and we did not know where our accommodation was, had it on the GPS, and ended up going up this gravel road almost right after we got off the ferry, very steep, and then a little nervous about where I was going to park or turn the bike around if this wasn't the right place. I remember I stopped on the hill because I didn't want to go around the corner because I didn't know what was there. And Joan got off the bike and went to see where we checked in, and I sat there trying to hold the bike on this hill, and of course your feet are on the ground and you have the front brake on, but the weight is all at the back wheel. And so we started to slip down the hill. Anyway, it was not a very comfortable feeling, and I was relieved when Joan said, you know, come on up, it's flat up here, and we check in around the corner. The drive down through Vancouver Island was again spectacular. We went to a little side trip to Telegraph Cove, which is a unique little former fishing village that now has been totally taken over by tourism, and it is beautiful. Your accommodation is old fishing shacks, and there's a whale museum that's incredible and very popular for kayakers, because right outside the mouth of the little harbor is where the killer whales and whales in general migrate. Anyway, we arrived in Victoria a couple of days later, stayed with Joan's brother for a little bit, and stayed downtown with friends for the actual reunion. I think impressed the heck out of everybody that we were at the reunion, having arrived by motorcycle via Alaska. So certainly created a little bit of a legend at that time. Once the reunion was over, we got back on the motorcycle and headed back to Calgary to rejoin the family there, and left Joan to say goodbye to her sister and spend a couple of days while I took the motorcycle home alone, and had a marvelous drive through Canada without incident until I got to a place in north of Lake Superior, where after I'd stayed a night in a nice little motel, as I left town, the throttle cable broke. And I called up the road service that I had, and a guy showed up 2 minutes later with a trailer. We hauled the Goldwing up, put the Goldwing on this pad that he had, hauled the pad up onto the back of his truck, and the whole thing was low enough that we just left the trailer attached and it ran on the road. And in 10 minutes we were back at the Honda dealer. Unfortunately, it was a Friday, and he was going to be until Monday before he could get the part in and get me on my way. But it was a lovely little town. The motel I was in had a restaurant attached, and it was quite pleasant. Next door to the restaurant was the beer store, a Tim Hortons and laundry, and the whole thing was within walking distance, easy walking distance to the Honda dealer. And it was the Talladega NASCAR race that weekend. So I just relaxed, ate well, walked around the town, and watched the car race at my leisure. Did my laundry and was all set for Monday when I hit the road again. By the time we got back home, I think I had about 2 months on the road, and it was absolutely wonderful. Would have turned around and gone back again. That was basically the end of other than Americade every year and trips, Cape Breton Trail and whatnot. That was the last of the very, very long trips on the Goldwing. But it was a tremendous bike to ride on. When I was alone, I would get up and ride a full tank of gas before I would have breakfast. Then I'd have breakfast, and I'd probably ride 2 tanks of gas, and I'd have my supper and ride to a campground. And that became my routine all the way out, and I think I could nominally cover 700 to 800 kilometers a day, and I do remember one day actually doing 900 kilometers. And that particular day I was coming up to Chicago, and I remember thinking I wanted to get past Chicago so that I wouldn't be facing that traffic, even though I was on the outskirts. We didn't want to be facing Chicago traffic in the morning. So I thought, well, my aim was to get past Chicago and then find a hotel. And next thing you know, it got dark, and I'd always said, well, I wasn't going to be doing this in the dark, especially tired. But if I did that, I wouldn't do it in the rain. Well, then it started to rain, and visibility was an issue until I realized I was riding with my green visor down. But when I flicked the green visor up, I was getting pelted by the rain, and it became a quick change back and forth from one to the other. And I remember thinking, as I had achieved my objective of getting past Chicago, thinking, okay, God, I need a hotel right now. And there was a sign, Holiday Inn, quarter mile. And I think that was probably the most blessed stop I've ever made in my whole life. Anyway, after that, it was other than, I'd say, the throttle cable braking, it was pretty straightforward all the way home. And that was, what did I say? That was about 2004, and nothing exceptional with the Goldwing. I mean, lots of rallies, lots of trips to Americade and whatnot. But there was a little Harley gene running around in my head. You know, a lot of my friends had Harleys, and there was just that niggling thing in my mind, and some of my friends knew it, or they would tease me about it. And I happened to be on doing the motorcycle course as an instructor, and a friend of mine who knew of my little perversion came up, and he said, they've got your Harley, Joe. And he knew that I would not accept a Harley unless it had what a Goldwing had, you know, fixed fairing, CB, intercom, radio, and hard bags, and a trunk, and cruise control. And sure enough, Harley Davidson in 2011 came out with the Road Glide Ultra, which was basically the Harley Davidson Goldwing, albeit air-cooled. Went down to look at it. It was this bright blue, definitely not my color, and I could relax. I went back. Another training weekend, he showed up again, and he said, okay, now they've got your color. And now I had to go and talk to my wife. I was starting to obsess. And I said, look, we have to go and look at this thing. You know, it has to be a yay or a nay. I can't keep thinking about this damn Harley. So she said, okay, and out we went. The Harley dealer was a friend of ours. We had been to Americade a couple of times together and whatnot. Anyway, I walked in, and here was this Wanglo Merlot Goldwing or Road Glide Ultra sitting there in the lights, and it did look pretty. I climbed on it, and Joan climbed up in behind me to make sure that she would be comfortable on it. Took it off the side stand, and the owner came walking over, and we chatted for about 15 minutes about general things, and all of a sudden Joan leaned over my ear and she said, "You have to buy this motorcycle." And I was in shock, and I said, "Why?" She said, if I had been on the Goldwing with you standing there keeping it in balance, and I'd been moving around like I have been over the last 10 minutes, she said, you would have been apoplectic. You didn't even notice I was moving back here. And she was right. The Harley Davidson with a lower center of gravity and with a lower seat which allowed you to splay your legs out a little more was certainly far more stable at a stop than the Goldwing was, where you were sitting a little higher and your feet are almost straight down. So you don't have a lot of extra leverage. And that was all I needed. We made the deal that day, and the idea was that he'd have it all prepped for me for Monday. I was pretty excited. Joan insisted that I had to have our trailer painted so that it matched the Harley, but that was no problem. The paint job cost me as much as the trailer did in the start. Anyway, I picked the bike up on a Monday, and it had to have 1,600 kilometers on it before the first inspection, and that was fine. I then proceeded to put 1,600 kilometers on it the next 4 days, and showed up back again on the Friday and said, I'm doing the 1,600 kilometer inspection, and I need it finished today because we're leaving tomorrow morning for a bit of a trip. Two friends and myself had decided that we were going to leave town and drive down to Washington, D.C. and carry on out and do the Blue Ridge Parkway. And we were leaving on that Saturday morning. Sure enough, they got the job done, and Saturday morning we left for basically a 2-week trip. And instead of just doing the Blue Ridge Parkway, one of the fellows saw on the map that we were only that far from the Dragon. And well, we had looked at a Goldwing convention down in Maggie Valley, and I had all that information in my mind. So I said, okay, let's do that. And we booked rooms at Maggie Valley, and off we went. Well, it turned out that that was about 2 days of very, very hot riding. But once we got down into the Maggie Valley, we stayed there for 2 or 3 days and did some beautiful riding, including the Dragon. And I've got to say that, you know, when it came to comparing the Goldwing to the Harley, I always tell people that I was more comfortable after 5 minutes on the Harley Davidson than I was 19 years on Goldwings. And it's true. The center of balance was lower. The steering was far better. I found that the Goldwing at a high-speed corner sometimes almost felt like it was fighting you, and the Harley Davidson was far more capable of getting into a turn. And on the Dragon, I swear that I would have toppled that bike at least once or twice if I had been on the Goldwing. And basically what it was you'd get into a very tight turn and find that you were one gear maybe too high than you needed to be. And with the Harley, with the low-end grunt, you just crank on the throttle and she'd haul you out of it, whereas the Goldwing, I think, would have had trouble and might have stalled on me. However, not to say that on a long drive I would prefer one over the other, because the Harley Davidson was consistently very, very hot on a hot day. There were times when you'd be wearing your chaps over leathers at 95 degrees because you needed it to protect your thighs from the heat of the bike. However, we had a great trip. We stopped in at Americade on the way home for a day to visit friends. We popped in at Laconia for a day at Bike Week and managed to pack all that into, I think, about a 2-week, 8,000 kilometer trip. Loved having the Harley. Loved hearing that thing start in the morning. You know, when you hit that starter and there was that clunk and the rumble. Something that, of course, wasn't there with the Goldwing. And I must say that the next number of years were fantastic. I had a plan in my mind for about 2 years, starting in about 2013, of doing another coast to coast on the Harley, and I'm perfectly comfortable riding on my own. And I had planned it.
Well, anyhow, he omitted the part where he sold the Goldwing there.
Yeah, Andre just reminded me that the transition from the Goldwing to the Harley. The Goldwing, had the Harley was a quick decision, and in fact, I tell you, it was so quick that we actually were booked to go to the Goldwing convention in Tennessee, as I mentioned earlier. And when the changeover to the Goldwing came, or Goldwing to the Harley came, and I put the Goldwing up for sale, and left it with the Harley dealer. And next thing you know, along came Andre, who's taping us, and he purchased it. We had 176,000 kilometers on it, and I assured him that it was certainly good for many more, which he proved, because he took it to 240,000 plus before he traded it in for something a little bit smaller as we get older. Now I'm 69 when I buy this Harley. Like I say, it was a quick decision. As a matter of fact, when we arrived at Americade from doing the Dragon, two of the people that were there that we wanted to drop in and see were the ones that we had planned on going to the Goldwing convention with. And all of us, and I showed up at Americade driving a Harley saying, I guess we're not going to the Goldwing convention anymore. Anyway, this next trip I was planning, and I started planning on my probably my 72nd birthday, but it was another trip across Canada to hit all the high spots. As a pilot, I had never been to Oshkosh, which is a very large air show and trade show in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. Now, being a new Harley driver, I was committed to go to the Mother Earth in Milwaukee and visit the Harley Davidson Museum and maybe some other places. So I had this plan I'd worked out a couple years earlier, and where I was going to stay, and broke it to my Harley friend, and he said, "Hey, I'm on." And the planning started in earnest. And in 2015, we left in about later in August to hit Oshkosh, which is the end of August, and visited the air show. Well, it was a 3-day push till Milwaukee, and as we got there, we began to think, wow, maybe we bit off a little more than we can chew. Jim, my riding buddy, had some swelling in his leg that we couldn't really explain and had him uncomfortable. And we were staying in a place outside Oshkosh, wondering if maybe we were going to have to call this the turnaround point. But we had 2 days of walking around at the air show, and then a short trip to Milwaukee, and 3 more days or 2 more days in a hotel there while we visited the museum and the power plant museum just outside Milwaukee, and do our laundry and relax. And get our wind back, and by the time that little stop was over, we were back on our horse and ready for the next. So it was off through Michigan, off into the Badlands, in I guess South Dakota, I'm not sure, and up into I'm trying to get my geography right, and then it was to Rapid City and Sturgis. So after the Badlands.
How old were you making this trip?
This was in 13 or in 15, so I was now 73. Age was not a factor. As a matter of fact, age was almost a blessing. We arrived in Sturgis, and we stayed in a place called Hewlett, which is out by the Devil's Tower. So that's about 60 miles west of Sturgis. We arrived on the Saturday. Sturgis basically goes from Sunday to Sunday, and we arrived on the Saturday, headed into the Black Hills to drive around to do Mount Rushmore, the Needles, Spearfish Canyon. Awesome, incredible riding. In fact, I did it in my Mustang just last year, and every time I was driving some of those corners, I have to ask myself, did I really do this on two wheels? Hauling a trailer at one point, and in fact we did, and it was just tremendous riding. The bikes were flawless. The company was fantastic, and then we headed into Sturgis on the Sunday or the Monday, and we'd never been there. We didn't know what to expect. We didn't even know what exit to get off of, and somehow or other we drove past Sturgis and came in on a back exit and wandered around, and lo and behold, didn't we find ourselves roadside parking about 2 blocks from the downtown core, which was just amazing. Walked around in Sturgis for the entire day, saw some amazing Sturgis sights, and at the end of the day, we had enough. It was everything we expected, if not more so, and now we were a little concerned about finding our way back out in the crowds. And again, we messed up, took the wrong exit out of Sturgis in the wrong direction, avoided all of the traffic. We're now on the highway driving back to Hewlett, passing these literally miles and miles of people in line waiting to get onto the highway, and we had left Sturgis and we're on the highway in 5 minutes and on our way to Hewlett. The next morning, starting our way further west, we had an amazing, very early morning visit at Devil's Tower, which is almost a spiritual exercise, because everybody seems to be in reverence. And the road, as you go up to the parking area at Devil's Tower, you actually go around the tower at least once. And early morning, we had some deer, sort of cut in front of us, but it was just magical. Our next stop was Yellowstone, and to get into Yellowstone, you have to cross the lip of the crater, and we found ourselves stopped in awe and cold, and have a picture of the GPS showing that we're at 9,300 feet, and it's 8 degrees and a little bit of rain. Down into Yellowstone, again, it stayed raining for a good part of the day, but we did stop at Old Faithful, and got there just in time to see it go off, and then back on the bikes, and we were on our way to the Road to the Sky. And the Road to the Sky is in Montana, and it is quite unique, not in the fact that it's exceptionally high, because at the top you're only at 7,600 feet, I had done it when I had been out west by myself on the Goldwing, and was not going to do it with Joan when we went to Las Vegas, but I was going to do it on my own on the Goldwing, and I did it with a camera in my hand and got some rather scary sights. But it was a bit foggy and rainy, so it lost some of its sort of awe. So with Jim, we had decided we were going to do it on our way out. Well, ran into a problem. There had been forest fires on the east side, and they weren't sure if they were going to open the west side. So we stayed at a motel at Glacier West, which is down south of the park. And in the morning, woke up to find out that the east side was open. Decided, well, we weren't sure. We weren't sure what to expect. There had been forest fires. So we made up our minds that we would go up from the west side and then turn around at the rest stop at the top, which is quite a tremendous visitors area and viewing spot. And then we'd come back down on the west. Well, again, I had done this before, and I'd done it from east to west. The catch here is that when you do it from east to west, the mountainside is always on your right, on the side you're driving, and the cliff side is always on the other side of the other lane. When you do it from west to the top, west to east, you are now riding up on the eastbound lane, and the cliff side is right at your elbow. Now, I'm a pilot, and I've been flying for over 50 years by this time, and yet every time my eye wandered to the cliff, and it was about a 4,000-foot drop with no real guardrails, I would almost get sick, and I'd have to force myself to look forward and concentrate on the road and never mind this view off to the drop-off. Anyway, it was a beautiful and rather awesome ride up to the top, and we did our little visiting, and then on the way down I realized how much more relaxing it was to be on the opposite side of the road with the cliff side at your side, rather than on the other side coming up with the cliff drop sitting off your elbow. Anyway, the next stop after that was to visit my brother-in-law in Cranbrook, and then a friend who lived in Vernon, and it just so happened that my riding buddy had a relative in Vernon as well. And then it was up to Lillooet and doing the road down from Lillooet down past Whistler, where we stayed with some old Navy friends for the night, and down to catch the ferry in Vancouver. And that highway from Vernon up to Lillooet and then down past Whistler is just amazing. You're crossing all the mountain ranges, so it's twist and turn up, twist and turn back, ferry or bridge across the river or stream, and then twist and turn up and twist and turn back, and it was just awesome technical driving. Very tiring, because you cannot relax. You're paying attention all the time. Once we got to Vancouver Island, we went to stay with Joan's brother, my brother-in-law, and in a beautiful big house. Jim went up to visit some family and friends in Comeau, and we sort of had our separate visiting time. And our intention originally was to go down towards California and do that bit of a loop. In fact, temperatures were in the 105 degrees, and there was forest fires all the way down the coast in Washington, in Oregon, and in California. And we sort of looked at each other and said, yeah, we've made it coast to coast, and it's time to head home. Which we did after a nice break. headed back, and some interesting weather. We had not had any weather issues on the way out. In fact, other than some of the cool and rain in Yellowstone, it had been perfect, very hot, but perfect driving weather. And anyway, we headed back, and we were on our way to Moose Jaw. And as we left, going through the mountains, I looked through, I'm trying to think of the name of the pass. I fairly knew it goes from Merritt to, I'm not sure, and I can't even remember the name of it now, but I remember looking in my rearview mirror, and behind us, it was black. I mean, totally black. And we only found out later that the weather behind us by about 2 hours was 6 inches of hail and freezing rain. And we had come through it in the sunshine. It was a very funny story stopping at Merritt at a Tim Hortons, and as we came out from the Tim Hortons, there was 2 elderly Chinese gentlemen standing beside the 2 Harleys. And one gentleman who wanted to talk, but he didn't want to appear as though he was interested, kept saying, "My friend." So he said, "My friend want to know what type of motorcycle," and we said, "A Harley Davidson's." "Ah, Harley," and no disrespect intended. He says, "Harley," and he says, "Where you come from?" And we said, "Nova Scotia." "Ah," and he said, "My friend wants to know, how old are you?" And I said, "I'm 73. And he said, "No." He said, "Take off your hat." I took off my hat where I had my shaggy gray hair, and he said, "Oh." And that was it. To this day, I wish the heck we'd taken a picture of the 4 of us by the motorcycles, because this guy was in awe of the Harley and these 2 old fellas who were riding him. Anyway, the next adventure was on the way towards Moose Jaw, and we had stopped. The weather was looking terrible, and but we were in good weather, and Moose Jaw was in good weather, but the area in between was had this green band of crap that was running up between it. But you know, we looked at it and said, well, let's make the decision in the morning. So we got up early in the morning, and again the weather was still wonderful where we were, and it was looking decent, but there was this band of stuff reporting for the road in between, and we sort of looked at each other and said, the heck with it. Let's not take a chance. We've had good weather and good luck so far. Let's just take a road break here and stay for the day. And we did. Got on the bikes the next morning in a lovely dry day, and within 30 kilometers we hit 70 kilometers of dirt road where they were doing repairs on the road. And I can't imagine what that would have been like in the rain if we had left the day before. It would have been virtually impassable. Which brings to mind another story I didn't mention. As we were heading through St. Louis, Missouri, that area, and we came to a sign that said road construction ahead. Motorcycles are advised to take Highway XXX to whatever our destination was. Yeah, we looked at it and said, well, you know, how bad can it be? And off we went. Now, I was towing the trailer, and anyway, we head down this road, and we crest a hill, and highway construction does not half describe this total turmoil we saw in front of us. There were no highway, you know. They were building a highway from scratch, and what we were facing was 4 miles of heavy gravel with the trucks working on it. Now, we were already at speed, talking to each other, and it was basically, well, crap, we can't turn around. We were into the gravel, and all we could do was, keep our hand on the throttle, stand up on the foot pads, and do the best we could. And I swear to this day that it was the trailer that helped to keep the back end in control. But I remember finding one area where the gravel wasn't too deep, and thinking, okay, I've got this ace now. And I look up, and there's a giant earth mover coming towards me, and he's kicking up so much gravel and so much dirt that he can't possibly see this motorcycle coming at him. So it's up to me to leave my little shallower gravel trail and get into the heavy stuff, which I did without losing the damn bike. But it was a long 4 kilometers of never really being in control and never really being out control until we finally hit blessed dirt on the other side. Yeah, it's one of those memories we still talk about. Anyway, we're now past the what would have been a muddy road and on our way to Moose Jaw. And we're looking ahead, and we can see terrible looking thunderstorms up ahead of us. And I'm listening to the radio, and they're calling for severe thunderstorms at Moose Jaw. And it just so happens that the road curved just around every thunderstorm, and we drove the whole route in sunshine around these big threatening blackheads, and arrived in Moose Jaw in absolutely perfect weather. No other incidents until we got just outside of Wawa on our way to Sault Ste. Marie and along the north shore of Lake Superior. And all of a sudden my radio goes off with an emergency signal in the middle of this program I was listening to on CBC. And the guy is reporting tornadoes, only he's not saying where they are. And then the emergency signal would cut out, and you'd be back to the talk show. But the people on the talk show weren't saying anything. And finally, about the third time this happened, and I'm wondering if we're not going into something, and about the third time this happened, the people on the talk show said, well, we understand that there's an emergency signal cutting into our broadcast, so we're just going to see what we can find out. Of course, then they reported that the tornadoes had gone through Wawa, 30 minutes behind where we had just come. And in fact, we had absolute flawless driving, basically for the rest of the trip back home. It certainly was a trip that was superbly planned. Everything went exactly. We were in places, 2 years after the date, to the date that I had projected on, on those early planning days. And it was truly an adventure to be savored. And thanks to Jim's GoPro, we had a lot of it on video. So that was 2015. Well, about 2018, realized my wife wasn't coming on the motorcycle anymore. And we had done almost everything. And she was not comfortable with the ride. She wasn't comfortable getting on and off, sitting behind this helmet, as we went place to place. And made the decision to, maybe we should trade the motorcycle in and buy a convertible Mustang. Well, I think we came up with a plan on a Wednesday, and by Wednesday week we had picked out a couple of cars. By Friday, we had made a deal with a guy in Quebec City for a 2013 Mustang convertible they had for sale, and he would take the Harley Davidson in trade. I wasn't getting a lot of money, but then I was getting a darn good deal on the Mustang. Closed the deal on late on Saturday. We left Yarmouth on Monday, Goldwing and trailer, or sorry, Harley Davidson and trailer and wife on the back, and stopped in Edmonton, booked a room for 2 days, and left the next morning, drove to Quebec City, gave them the Harley Davidson and the trailer and some extra money, hopped in this beautiful Mustang and turned around and drove back to Edmonton to our hotel room, and we left the top down for the next 2 days, and it was fantastic. In fact, the next year we repeated our coast to coast that we had done in the motorcycle in the Mustang to another Navy reunion. However, the motorcycle heart beats deep and strong, and I was still involved in the Warfront Rally, and I was still involved in the motorcycle club, Canadian Army Veterans, and you can't do all that without having a motorcycle. And I asked Andre here if he would keep an ear out for, say, Honda VTX 1300. That evening I got a call from a fellow up here who had exactly that, and was willing to sell it. He wasn't riding it at all, and within a couple of days we had made the deal. I gave him part of his money. He kept the motorcycle in his den for the rest of the winter, and I picked it up in this spring just past, and had a marvelous couple of days riding on the VTX. It is not a Goldwing, and it is not a Harley, but boy, it sure is easy to move around in.
Yeah, what's the one that gave him your phone number?
You were the one that gave him the phone number, yeah.
Right,
And it took just a day. I mean, literally, I suggested to Andre what I was looking for, and he had a guy in touch with me within 24 hours. So one thing about motorcycles, it doesn't take very long to buy them, and they certainly bring me a lot of fun. And I'm now 78, and looking forward to many more years if my back and my legs don't give out. I'm not sure if I won't look for something a little bit softer to ride, for the follow-on. But the VTX is a beautiful ride until you hit some of those potholes. And that's about my motorcycle history so far. And I'm sure there's much more to be written.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed your talk about your past experience motorbiking, and it was nice to have you here for this video.
Well, thank you, Andre.
And thank you.
As you say, it's now down for posterity, and unfortunately, I don't think my kids or my grandkids will be interested, but maybe somebody else will be.
Oh, you never know, and never. The old saying goes, I guess we're never too old to motorbike ride. So there you go.
No, that's right. And I still remember the day that Andre here introduced me to a fellow up in Digby, and there was a bike there, and he said, "Oh, I know the owner of that motorcycle." We went in to meet him, and so it was a couple of years ago, and he was 84. There is no end as long as you have your senses about you, assuming that you have your senses about you and you're still riding motorcycle.
Okay, well, that's the end of the video, and thank you, Joe.
Okay.